Can we then come to Crawford? Because you had one-to-one discussions with President Bush without any advisors present. Can you tell us what was decided at these discussions?
There was nothing actually decided, but let me just make one thing clear about this, that one thing that is really important, I think, when you're dealing with other leaders is you establish, and this is particularly important, I think, for the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and the President of the United States, you establish a close and strong relationship. You know, I had with President Clinton, I had it again with President Bush. And that's important. So some of it you will do in a formal meeting, but it's also important to be able to discuss in a very frank way what the issues were. And as I recall that discussion, it was less to do with specifics about what we were going to do on Iraq or indeed the Middle East, because the Israel issue was a big, big issue at the time. In fact, I think I remember actually there may have been conversations that we had even with Israelis, the two of us, whilst we were there. So that was a major part of all this. But the principal part of my conversation was really to try and say, look, in the end, we've got to deal with the various different dimensions of this whole issue. I mean, for me, what had happened after September the 11th was that I was starting to look at this whole issue to do with this unrepresentative extremism within Islam in a different way. And I wanted to persuade President Bush, but also to get a sense from him as to where he was on that broader issue.
So what you're suggesting is that you were having general discussions in terms of getting the views across to each other, trying to understand and establish a rapport and a relationship.
Yeah, but also, you know, frankly, from his...
But during the course of these discussions, do you think you gave him any commitments?
The only commitment I gave, and I gave this very openly at the meeting, was a commitment to deal with Saddam. Now,
so you were at one that you had to deal with...
Absolutely. So, and that wasn't a private commitment, that was a public commitment.
So you were agreed on the end, but not on the means?
We were agreed on both, actually, as it came to finally, but we were agreed that we had to confront this issue, that Saddam had to come back into compliance with the international community. And as I think I said in the press conference with President Bush, the method of doing that is open. And indeed, he made the same point. I just wanted to make one other point about this. This was about 6 months from September the 11th. And one major part of what President Bush was saying to me was just to express his fear, actually, that if we weren't prepared to act in a really strong way, then we ran the risk of sending a disastrous signal out to the world.
But there is... so many people believe that you entered into a firm commitment because some undertakings were given that you will be with him no matter what, whatever the circumstances. I mean, I think it's important because these discussions were taking place without anybody being present to understand what commitments did you make to him and why is there a feeling that this was quite a critical meeting? Well,
I honestly, I can't explain why people have come to a view that there was some different commitment given, because I read from time to time people saying things that this is what was agreed at this meeting. What was agreed was actually set out in a very private note from David Manning afterwards. And what I was saying to President Bush, and I wasn't saying this privately, incidentally, I was saying it publicly, was we are going to be with you in confronting and dealing with this threat. There was no... I mean, the one thing I was not doing was dissembling in that position. In fact, I actually have here, I think, at the press conference that President Bush and I gave afterwards, we talked about, I think it was Israel actually came up first, but then we went on to Iraq. And President Bush says, the Prime Minister and I, of course, talked about Iraq. We both recognize the danger of a man who's willing to kill his own people and harboring and developing weapons of mass destruction. And then goes on to say that he's got to effectively prove that he's in compliance. And I then say, it's always been our policy that Iraq would be a better place without Saddam. I don't think anybody should be in any doubt about that for all the reasons I've given. And the reasons are to do with the weapons of mass destruction, also deal with the brutality and repression.
I'm so sorry, Mr.
Can you go slowly?
Could you slow down a bit?
I'm so sorry. My apologies. So what I say is, and you know, the reasons to do with weapons of mass destruction, also to do with the appalling brutality and repression of his own people, but how we proceed in this situation, how we make sure that the threat that is posed by WMD is dealt with, that is a matter that is open. So, and I'm going to describe the UN resolutions. So the position was not a covert position, it was an open position. And of course, what subsequently the debate was about in July and then in September at the crucial meeting.
But before we move on to that, I mean, that's what you were saying, but what did President Bush understand, you think you meant by that? Because we heard from Alistair Campbell about, you know, the tenor of your correspondence with him, but what was his understanding? What did he take it to mean?
I think he took it to mean what I'd said both at the press conference and in the meeting, which is that we would be with them in dealing with this threat. How we dealt with it was an open question. And even at that stage, of course, I was raising the issue of going the UN route.
Now, your Chief of Staff told us that at Crawford and subsequently, you did not set any conditions for Britain's support for the US, but that your approach was to say, we are with you in terms of what you're trying to do, but this is a sensible way to do it. We are offering you a partnership to try and get to a wide coalition. But other witnesses who were also involved in the decision-making process have told us that you set a number of clear conditions for our support. Which was it?
It was the former. Look, this is an alliance that we have with the United States of America. You know, it's not a contract. It's not, we'll do this for you, you do this for us. It's an alliance. And it's an alliance I say to you very openly, I believe in passionately. I had been through with President Clinton, Kosovo, and just let me emphasize to you, 85% of the assets we used in Kosovo were American assets. I had real difficulty persuading President Clinton that it was right to go all the way on Kosovo. And he was in a really difficult position, and it was an immensely courageous decision he took, because the American people were saying to him, look, this place is thousands of miles away from America. Let the Europeans deal with it. It's on their doorstep. But it's important to understand this.
But Sir Christopher Mayor did say that, you know, you were saying yes, but the but wasn't being listened to.
Well, I actually don't think Christopher Mayor was there at the critical meeting.
But he had correspondence, he was briefed and all of that.
He was talking about a wider period in 2002, not just about one meeting.
Yes, but the fact is, at that meeting, and it's, I think the other evidence that's been given to you, particularly by David Manning, is very clear about this. We were setting out a position, and as I say, that position was not a private position, it was a public position. But I was just explaining about the American alliance because it's important, and it's important in understanding my thinking on this. So I'd been through this process with President Clinton when he, with a lot of courage, had committed America. September the 11th happened. I never regarded September the 11th as an attack on America. I regarded it as an attack on us. And I'd said we would stand shoulder to shoulder with them. We did in Afghanistan, and I was determined to do that again.
Fine.